just gave me this time. He's here. Let's hear it for Bill McKibben. He's working with some scientists who know how to get the message out. So all is not lost. 250.org is such an incredible example of the fact that change is still possible and that we can get our heads around complicated ideas and land them on the agenda. I'm just so amazed by what you guys have accomplished in so little time. It is a true success story. As you can see, my voice is going, and I've spoken with George before, and you know, I should have asked to speak first. I forgot. But I'm going to be talking about something a little bit different. But we've got a discussion period, so I'm happy to talk about the street protests or what's going on in the Bell Center if people want to talk about that. And but I think there's a lot of really negative things to talk about what's going on, and we know that the negotiations are falling apart. I interviewed Ambassador Lumumba this morning. He had been up all night, hadn't slept a wink, and the result of this all-night negotiating session was a text that was entirely bracketed. So things are not going well, as we know. And at this point, I think we shouldn't be naive. I know that you know, we're all sort of fingers crossed, and I heard Kumi Naidoo, you know, maybe miracles are possible. But honestly, I think part of what gets us into trouble is waiting for messiahs. Obama's not the messiah, okay? He's not going to come in and save the day. Let's be grown-ups about it, okay? If there is a deal that is rammed through in the next couple of days, it's only because developing countries have had their arms twisted, been offered all kinds of ugly side deals, and the G77, which was whose proposals were the closest to the science, and were certainly the ones based on social justice, has been broken. Okay, and that's no victory. That is nothing to celebrate. So we need to be clear about this. And you know, being here in the Tick 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 Center, I think we all know that we need to be thinking about post-Copenhagen messaging. It has been an incredible mobilization, getting people focused on this summit and on this conference. But the whole seal the deal framing is problematic. We cannot be satisfied with just any deal. And we, unfortunately, too many of us have played into this campaign, which is actually really weakening the hands of the principal developing countries who are holding the line, because they are being positioned as the spoilers, and they're not the spoilers. They're the only ones who are making proposals based on justice. So that's why I thought today's mobilization was really important, because you know, we need to bring it back to the issues. What's ticking is the time to deal with the crisis, and of course that's what generated all of this energy, and that's what's going to sustain the energy into the future. But I think we need to somehow use all of our voices in the next 24 hours, crucial period, that no deal is better than a bad deal. Because locking in emission targets to 2020, that, as you know, Bill said to me yesterday, would forget 2 degrees, would increase temperatures to 3.9 degrees. No, that is no victory. We need to be really, really clear about this. Now, to me, what makes me hopeful here in Copenhagen is that I believe this summit will go down in history as the moment when environmentalism became a social justice issue. The voice of the South has spoken out. The whole of environmentalism has moved south. All of these groups that have traditionally been focused on debt, like Jubilee South, on development, like the World Development Movement and Oxfam and Action Aid, have come into this movement because what they're finding is that as they try to fight poverty around the world, climate change is the single greatest barrier to human development. That's why Greenpeace hired Kumi Naidoo out of the anti-poverty movement, because they understand this. So this movement is being transformed, but what's exciting about it is that it's also multiplying in size, because these are big movements, and they're coming together. to me, this is what's been so exciting about being here these past couple weeks. I guess it was this summer I pitched a story to my editors at Rolling Stone that I wanted to write about the issue of climate debt because I believed that it was going to be the big issue in Copenhagen. And they asked, what's climate debt? And indeed, almost everybody who I spoke to about climate debt in the North asked, what's climate debt, including very sophisticated activists. No one's going to ask that anymore, are they? It is solidly on the agenda. The facts are so stunning, they're so clear, that of course nobody even wants to debate it. They want to dismiss you, not debate it. They want to tell you how unrealistic, unstrategic, how little you understand about the political context in the United States. But they won't debate the facts because the facts are clear. Okay? 75 to 80% of the historical emissions that created the climate crisis were created by 20% of the world's population in the rich world. According to the World Bank, 75% of the effects of climate change are being felt in the developing world. There is a cruel, inverse relationship between cause and effect. Saying that there is a debt owed is nothing strange. It's based on the basic principle of the polluter pays, of you broke it, you bought it. And in fact, it's a much more dignified position for the Global South to come to these discussions with, okay? And I'm saying this because I've been hearing from a lot of people, particularly in the US, who dismiss this issue out of hand, particularly if you use the word reparations, and talk about how dangerous it is because it's going to fuel the right in the US. They don't like talking about reparations. They don't like talking about debt. They don't like the idea that there's a lot of black and brown people out there in the world that want US money, so we have to somehow package this in ways that are acceptable to Americans. We've done enough of it, okay? We are not going to tell the South how to talk, all right? This is a discourse. Live with it, learn to sell it better. Remind people that the word reparations means to repair, okay? To repair a damage done. And what's exciting to me about the whole calculation of climate debt and looking at what is owed and how much more of the atmospheric space we have taken up in the North is that, in fact, if you listen to developing countries, they're not just asking for money. In fact, they're very, very clear, but certainly the people who pioneered this idea are not governments. A few governments have taken it up, but it's incredible social movements like Action Ecológica, an Ecuadorian movement that has been developing this idea of ecological debt for many years, and they're very clear. We can't be paid back monetarily for the loss of the rainforest, for the loss of indigenous traditions and ways of life. But I was speaking to Yvonne Yanez, who's one of the leaders of Action Ecológica, who's here, and she said, well, the first thing you do to repair a damage is you stop doing the thing that did it, right? These ideas of repair actually bring us to the real discussion that we need to have, and then when we start talking about leaving fossil fuels in the ground. I think it is an inspiring discussion, especially because when we think about how we would spend the resources. And Angelica Navarro, the wonderful lead negotiator from Bolivia here in Copenhagen, is calling for our Marshall Plan for planet Earth. This is inspiring. It's the idea that we could marshal our resources to genuinely help the developing world leapfrog over fossil fuels and have a clean model of development, but recognizing that it's not going to happen magically. You know, we talk here about technology transfers, but nobody talks about intellectual property rights. We need to change the intellectual property regime if those technology transfers are going to be in place. If you read the Waxman-Markey bill, do a